Hey everyone, so in this video we're going to be covering the Evoker class and just kind of going into a bit of the talent builds and the basic sort of gearing that's proposed for this class, as well as a rotation. Let's get in and start with the stat builds for the Evoker. In general, the Evoker class, you want to be going with crit and mastery being your best secondaries. Intelligence is just kind of a given. More intelligence the better. But as for secondaries, you want to have high crit, high mastery, and from playing around with the spec, I find that 3% haste is about as low as you want to go to keep up your fire burst, which we'll talk about later in the rotation section. Any lower than 3%, it becomes hard to refresh the dot consistently in a single target situation. I find that 5% is probably going to be the ideal number of haste that you're going to want currently for this tier. Once you have your tier set, you're probably going to want to have a higher haste value before your tier set comes into play. Let's go over the talents. So as for talents, so on the class side of the tree, you want to go straight down, all the way down, make sure you're getting all these damaging abilities. You really want to make sure you pick up Leaping Flame. That's going to be a big DPS increase. You're also going to want to pick up as much healing and defensives as possible, because right now evokers are very, very squishy. And you do get a benefit from some of the self-healing that you can do and the healing you can do. You want to pick up Tip the Scales, 100%. And just for extra defensive use, you want to pick up your Obsidian Scales, Draconic Legacy, Tempered Scales. Sort of like optional traits you can go with. Oppressive Roar and Unravel can be swapped around depending on the situation. You want to pick up your additional charge of Hover every single time. You want to make sure Hover lasts longer. The speed increase doesn't really matter too much right now. Now, when it comes to Twin Guardians versus going with like say something like Fire Within for your renewing Blaze talent, it's hit or miss. The issue I see with Twin Guardians as a talent is it does do a good solid shield on you, but it only lasts 5 seconds. So if you do not time the damage source correctly, you're going to lose health. If you are in a situation in which you can't use it, like there's a few bosses in Mythic Plus where it's just not feasible to use during the damage situation for it, it's just not going to be, it's a dead talent in that sense. So it's okay in raid, I would say, but not all situations. And then as for sort of like optional talents, you can swap Zephyr to Time Spiral if needed. You could drop Terror of the Skies and pick up Ancient Flame if you want to have a little bit faster casts after you heal yourself, which is always a nice thing to have. I like using Terror of the Skies with Oppressing Roar in Mythic Plus. So this is my basic sort of go-to build for Mythic Plus and doing dungeon content. In raids, I swap those two. That seems to be what I like to play. The Source of Magic talent's pretty neat in that you do give mana to your healers. I don't know exactly how much mana they end up getting over the course of a fight, but it might be something worthwhile taking in raids. So you just be taking that instead of Ancient Flame if your healers are having trouble with mana on fights. Now let's go over to the spec tree. So in the spec tree, we got a couple talents that are must-haves. So must-have talent being Burnout and Feed the Flames. Have to have those talents. You want to have your Disintegrate, damage increase going straight down the middle. You don't actually need Onyx Legacy. That's just for Mythic Plus, and you kind of zigzag your way down this way. Charge Blast is somewhat of an optional talent. You don't really need it in single target, but if there's any sort of cleave AoE sort of aspects to a fight, you're going to want to take it. You also want to make sure that you take Eye of Infinity. Critical strikes grants you Essence Burst. You kind of go down the tree this way. Now, in a pure single target fight, you can dip out on Eternity Span, you dip out on Onyx Legacy, pick up Shattering Star, and then pick up Focusing Iris. Those are the two abilities you want to swap out. having Charge Blast there just is an extra button you can push during once you hit 20 stacks. So that way Pyre actually does damage. Another optional thing you can do here is take up Hoarded Power and go into Eternity Span. So this would be like your basic raid build in which there's no in which there are ads or there's extra bosses or extra enemies to hit. There's your Mythic Plus build. So the reason I go with this, you have a 1 minute cooldown on, you have a 1 minute reduction on your Deep Breath cooldown. That combined with Terror of the Skies and Oppressing Roar means you have a 3-second stun that just stuns everything, improved by 50% when you have this on top of it. So you end up getting 4.5 second stun every minute, which is not bad, and it's a big AoE stun, so it's not bad, and it does a lot of damage too. And then in pure single target, you're going to want to take rid of those two and take up that. So you're going to want to cast your Shattering Star and then Disintegrate spam afterwards, so that way you can get as many Eternity Surge procs off with your Disintegrate as possible. All right, so the Evoker with your damaging abilities, what you're going to want to do before the actual pull happens, you're going to want to actually set your Tip the Scales on. Now, this is just a proposed damage breakdown. This is what I like to do in single target, and it works quite well. Tip the Scales to put it on cooldown. You get the buff at the top. It doesn't go away. You start off the fight with 2 Disintegrates, followed by Dragon Rage, Eternity Surge, a level 1 Fire Breath, and then back into Disintegrate spams for the duration of Dragon Rage. So, and whenever you get a Burnout proc, you're going to want to hit Living Flame. With Lust, your cooldown is going to look something like this. So it's going to be 3, 2, 1, pull, Disintegrate, Dragon Rage, Eternity Surge, Fire Breath level 1, Disintegrate, waiting for Burnout procs, Disintegrate. Oh, there's 2 Burnout procs, so there's 1, cast it, Disintegrate, Burnout proc, Pyre while it's procced there, and then refresh that buff on there, so that way it's pandemicking on your Fire Breath, and just continue to burn Eternity Surge. And then when you run out, and so this is your basic rotation, and just rinse and repeat over and over again. You can see I'm doing about 88k. Now we are cleaving on 2 targets, and then you just kind of refresh that dot and go back to it. Things to sort of do in addition to that rotation: Deep Breath right now, according to like Preheat and a few of the other theory crafters out there, is you're going to want to do a Deep Breath when the target is below 60% health. That's when it becomes effective, which is why in single target we don't really care too much about it. It's better used on ads in fights because everyone's going to be cleaving down those ads anyway. So you start the fight, you do a couple, you swap over them as quickly as you can, and then you blow through. Now, some interesting things that you can do to bolster your damage in things like Mythic Plus. One, you have to count. So you have to count how many ads there are that you're fighting and charge up your Eternity Surge as appropriate. So if there's 1 or 2 enemies, you do a level 1. If there's 3 to 4, you do a 2. If there's 5 to 6, you do a 3. If there's 7 to 8, you do a level 5. You want to maintain your Fire Breath. This is what I was talking about earlier, in that I find that 3% haste is enough to keep the dot rolling in most situations. Having a little bit more haste would be more beneficial. So I think 3% is the minimum, like the bare minimum you can use to actually maintain that dot. But you also want to be able to, once it's pandemicking, be able to use a rank 2, which you should, I think, probably be around 6 to 10% haste in order to actually pandemic a level 2 once you get the duration up high enough of your Fire Breath. One other Mythic Plus sort of raid utility thing you can do is when you're about to Fire Breath at the end of a pack, what you can do is you can charge it as a rank 4, do the most damage that you can immediately, because they're not going to live for too much longer, so what's the point of having a rank 1? So blast them with a level 4, and then that gives you a level 4 Leaping Flames, which you can do at the start of a pull. And so an example with that would be, I'm going to actually damage myself to bolster Scarlet Adaptation up. So heal myself. You can see Scarlet Adaptation in the top left, top right there. So I gotta get a little bit more health off myself to get this. Boom. Okay. And it builds when you heal yourself. So I think I'm at max there. Let's just try a little bit more. It's based off of your health, your total health. Yeah, okay. So I'm at max. So what you would do is say the pack is, pack's dead. So we're just, whoa. It's going to charge up a rank 4 blast here. So pack's dead. You hit your rank 4 blast. You have your Leaping Flames level 4 and immediately starting the pull. So let's refresh all the data here. Immediately upon starting the next pull, and if you're really lucky, you have a burn up rock. You hit your Living Flame. It's going to hit 4 enemies. And I just did 439k in 1 second immediately upon starting a pull. So it's really, really good. Like you really want to try to do that to maximize your damage potential in Mythic Plus. But basic wise, just keep that if you don't want to worry too much about that, worry about keeping the dot up. That's the number one. That's going to get you the most damage out of anything, and making sure that you're using your procs whenever you get them. And hopefully that's going to be good enough to kind of get you the ball rolling. Everything else with this class is pretty utility wise, which is really fun. I'll make another little video about that later, but hope you enjoyed it. Hope this helps, and until next time, peace.